Michael Daner has been teaching meditation for 15 years and meditating for more than 45. He has been practicing Bhakti Yoga, Dzogchen, and Vipassana Buddhism. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
Really awesome to have you here. I'm super excited.
Thanks, Kathy.
So in this episode, we'll be talking about you, all about you, like you don't get enough chance to talk about yourself. So I want to hear about your story. I know that you've had, I don't know if I should, a checkered past.
That you could say that.
A little wild,
Yes.
wild thing.
Something Despite my appearance today, I was a wild, long-haired hippie smuggler, just way out there on the edge. I said, if my kids behaved like now, like I behaved, I would kill them.
You'd kill them. They wouldn't be alive anymore.
Yeah. So.
And so maybe we should pick up where the story, where the bulk of the story starts, maybe in India. Should we start in India, or do you want to talk maybe a moment before
basically, really...
Oh, you were a fugitive.
I was a fugitive on the Hippie Trail, basically. To explain that, the Hippie Trail, basically, the Beats, Allen Ginsberg, et cetera, went to India. But what really put this flow and brought all the people looking for consciousness, drugs, excitement, adventure, was when the Beatles went. When the Beatles went to study with a Maharishi, it was worldwide news. And it turned from a trickle into just a flood of people, where you could take a double-decker bus in London for $100 or 75 pounds and go all the way to India. And it was just a magical mystery tour. And I was invited originally by my friends who were going on a smuggling expedition to Afghanistan. And then they had a specially constructed...
And when they put that out there, that seemed appealing to you. Hey, you want to go smuggle with us?
Well,
you know.
To be honest, probably more honest than I should be, I was their dealer. And they were smugglers bringing things back. And I was, in that whole world, being a dealer, it's like being a businessman. Being a smuggler is like really an exciting adventure. So when they invited me to go on their trip, I don't even think I had a passport, and they just invited me to come along with them. And I just sat in the back seat, and my friend, who was sort of a larger-than-life character, put his whole thing together, and he was the driver. And basically, it was the worst smuggling adventure ever. They got busted in Afghanistan. I gave some money. They bought their way out of jail. It was one of these pro forma busts. They sell you this stuff. The police come. You get busted, and then so they got out. They brought the stuff.
So you didn't go.
He was mad at me because I told him that what he was getting was complete junk, and he shouldn't do the deal. He said he got mad at me. He said, "You go do your own thing." So I went and did my own thing. They got busted
For buying junk.
Yeah, exactly.
Let that be a lesson to you.
Yeah, but not junk in the other sense of junk.
Bad quality.
Yeah, bad quality. And on the other end, in Philadelphia, where we were all from and where it was going to, everybody was walking down the street saying, "When's the Land Rover coming back?" So it was the worst. It was the worst smuggling deal from A to Z. And when they came back and got busted in Philadelphia, I tried to help them get out of trouble. And for helping them get out of trouble, I think they dropped a dime, ratted me out, and they did tell me, "You better get out of Dodge." And I decided, well, where am I going to go? And I decided, where better to go than back on the Hippie Trail, since probably a tenth of the people there were fugitives anyway, on top of spiritual seekers. That was the interesting mixture. It was basically people on their way, looking for their gurus, for spiritual knowledge, sort of like what was the next step after psychedelic drugs or mind-expanding drugs, and the answer was India. So it was just a very heady mixture, and you could live for a couple $1,000s for a year out there. The American passport was king. The dollar was gold. It was just a different era. You could drive like they did. I met them in Venice, and they drove to Nepal. You could go all that way.
So then when did you So you went to, where did you go?
What happened was I met my wife-to-be, and I said, I have to get out of town. I'm going back on the Hippie Trail. And she said, can I come? And
You're like,
and
why
he
not?
said, wow, yeah, I got this beautiful, groovy lady, and let's go. And so we went to Amsterdam. We bought an old Mercedes minibus, had a false floor put in Amsterdam, sort of out on the street. And we headed off, and our plan was to go to Afghanistan.
So you drove?
Oh yeah, we drove. We drove from Amsterdam.
No double-decker bus for you?
No. People went every kind of way you can imagine, hitching, which was really dangerous once you got to Iran or Turkey, those places. But I had friends who came public transportation, every way possible. And at the time, we used to laugh at the people who would fly in to India, like people who were like Raghu and those people. They just flew directly to India. And
So
I thought,
you drove,
we drove
from Amsterdam to...
The plan was to drive from Amsterdam through Turkey. You cross the Bosphorus in Turkey, that's Asia. You're on the other side of the Bosphorus and you drive through Iran, and then you get to Afghanistan. Once you got to Afghanistan, it was like going back to the 14th century. It was, and Afghanistan, we think of Afghanistan as this war-torn country. It was totally peaceful. Yeah. It was really, really amazing, but really ancient. It was tribal. It was just what I had been looking for. And we thought, my wife, Sally and I thought we were going to be there for 2 weeks. And the war broke out between India and Pakistan, the second war, and they shut the borders to Pakistan. So instead of being there for 2 weeks, we were there for 5.5 months, which was probably the most fascinating 5.5 months of my life. And at that time, I received 2 letters from those people that I went the first time with, and one letter said, come back, everything's fine. The second letter said, don't come back, we were forced to write that. So at that point, I realized that I was a fugitive and I had to figure out some way to survive. So I was lucky enough to bump into the people from the Hog Farm commune that had a false bottom suitcase factory. And I contracted to buy a couple of suitcases as long as they taught me how to build false bottom suitcases. And that's how I got into doing that until I could move my van out, which I did. And
where did you go? So you moved the van out. So after 5.5 months?
After 5.5 months, we drove to India. We drove to Delhi. Well, actually, I had a house I rented in the diplomatic colony in Delhi. And there I did the suitcases. Then when you could open up...
Diplomatic colony.
Yeah. And
well, that's smart thinking. Nobody checked for you there.
Every time we did something, we were raided by the police. I felt like we had divine protection because every time we got raided by the police and let go, it was that time we had spent time in Kashmir, a summer in Kashmir, because we couldn't leave Afghanistan. We left our van and we flew to India in the meantime. And we started doing business in India. At the same time...
And you were making the suitcases there?
I was making the suitcases in India, and I sent... So I was really lucky. Everything that we did, all the people made it back successfully, and even our van.
So you're buying some drugs there, putting in the suitcase, giving it to someone, they're bringing it back to the States?
Yeah, we did it. Other people, we did it, and then we had people who were doing it. And yeah, flying back.
And were you scared, or was it, it was just...
Yeah, I was scared, and then... Yeah, but it was, it was the times. And the interesting thing was, this was before the war on drugs. The penalties were much less severe at that point.
It was more of a hippie thing, right? It
Yeah,
wasn't like it wasn't like big business. It wasn't like you were like toting guns and working over territories and stuff. You were just
I was paying for my adventure, basically. I didn't make a lot of money,
just enough to get.
I paid for the adventure. And the ultimate part of it was that we got back, we picked up our van in Afghanistan from customs. I had the money changer bring it, put it in a false bottom, and take it from Afghanistan to Pakistan, we loaded. Now, I'm telling you this like this just happened. No. I mean,
When I was a little kid.
when we loaded it in Pakistan, my friend Tom with the two wives, as he was known, his compound got raided. We were there till 2 o'clock in the morning. At 8 o'clock the next morning.
In Pakistan.
In Pakistan, in Peshawar, which is the Wild West, even today. In those days, it was really the Wild West. And so Tom, anyway, when we went back to pick up my friend who slept over after there were police surrounding the whole thing, and they stopped us. They looked in the back of our van, which we had just loaded. All that was in the back of the van was a bag full of tools and the false floor. They just gave us the thing. We've inspected your vehicle, license plate number. There you go.
Oh, gee, thanks.
And we drove to India, and we shipped it to Italy. We rented a villa in Italy, emptied out the van in Italy.
So you drove to Italy?
No, we shipped it from Bombay.
Oh, the truck.
We shipped the truck from Bombay to Naples.
Oh, and then you flew back or something?
Well, no, I couldn't go back because I was a fugitive.
Oh, so you stayed.
What I did was I emptied out the van, took out 120 pound, whatever, of hash from it, built it into suitcases, and sent all my friends back on the Italian line.
Oh, I see.
They all went back, cruised back on the Italian line.
So you're in, so
I'm
so
stuck
we're in
over there.
Pakistan.
Yeah.
You're still in Pakistan. So how do you end up in India at some point in Goa?
We just drove through Pakistan. Basically, we were in Afghanistan. Finally, after 5.5 months, they opened the border so you could take the van out.
So you end up in Goa.
And so
because you spent the significant time was in Goa,
yeah, because
right?
Goa was, we were all over India. We were in Kashmir,
so
we
you
were
were
in
just
Delhi,
moving around.
And actually the experience that I had in Goa was the first time that I went, because I split off from my friends with the Land Rover, the ill-fated Land Rover. They went back. I just traveled around as a backpacker in India, basically.
With your wife?
No, this was on their trip, the first trip.
Oh.
So this was I was by myself, and so what happened was we rented a little house in Goa, a little hut with 3 or 4 people, and one day one of the people came back and said, "Oh, I bumped into some guys from the Brotherhood on the road, the Brotherhood of Eternal Love, whose mission." They were a cult based around Timothy Leary, and they traveled the world spreading LSD and making fortunes around the world. As part of the compensation for the fact they were selling the drugs rather than giving them away, anybody they met, they would give this really pure Owsley acid. It was really like pharmaceutical quality LSD. And sounds like a little bit of a druggy experience, but you have to understand it was the time. It was the
You
times.
keep saying that.
So then I had experimented a lot with LSD, and always, because I was always, you're hearing all about the smuggler side and the treatment I wrote for a show that I'm trying to promote in Hollywood. It's seekers and smugglers. And I always personally had that dual. I was a seeker. I never took...
And by seeker, you mean like a spiritual seeker?
Yeah, I was always interested in consciousness and the whole, what are we here for? Where is the magic?
Wasn't that a
from the
big part of the
Bible?
hippie thing anyway?
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah,
it was kind
yeah,
of counterculture and what are we doing with this capitalism thing and all that, and
it was really exploration of consciousness, totally. And so I always had that dual track going. So when one of the guys who I was sharing the place with said, I got this Brotherhood LSD, you want to try some? I tried it, and it was just, I just had it, just like now they're experimenting with LSD, giving it to alcoholics and people, and 7 out of 10 people have religious experiences. I had just the most penultimate experience of my life, which sort of gave me what I think is really why we're here, where we're going, and all that. And don't ask, that's another story. And
I was hoping you were a little bit about.
and in any case, I had this, and just the immediate result of that was, okay.
So
now,
tell us a little bit about, you don't have to go into great detail, but tell us a little bit about what that experience was. So you dropped some acid.
I dropped some acid, and you know how you hear the stories about people who like jump off of buildings and this and that, and you think, I never got so high that I lost contact with reality. Well, I just left my body and just kind of returned to the one is the way I would explain it. And I saw that, to me, that we're all on the return to the one. If you're on the spiritual path, it's conscious. If you're not on the spiritual path, you're returning anyway. And the wild part of it is, it's theater. It's theater for the one. The one is experiencing the return of all these beings. And
So it's like a great experiment or something, you know?
well, it's the Leela. Then I found out
I don't know what
40
Leela
years
is.
later that
What's Leela?
the Leela, well, Leela means like a play or a dance. And it's the central tenet of Hinduism. I found out 40 years afterwards. I don't know how I missed that, but that if you look into Leela in Hinduism, they say it's this god or that god tore himself asunder and created the many to see their return for his entertainment. Is exactly the experience that I had. And I didn't read it, I just had it and didn't even know about its relationships to Hinduism. So that's what it was for me. But the result was, I thought, okay, now you've had your experience. Now let's try to find out how to get there naturally. And I began meditating right after that as a result of that experience, and gave up psychedelics, never tried I almost didn't want to ruin a pristine experience by maybe having a bad trip afterwards. So that's, and then I was always interested in consciousness, but never really had a meditation practice. But I began then, and that's when all the people were coming to India who became the original American Buddhist teachers. And I also had, besides that, I had mentioned I had the experience of walking, because I went to India also, not only to make money, that was just to pay for the trip, but it was for the adventure, not only the adventure of seeing Afghanistan like the 14th century, but it's like the magic. I always had this feeling, what happened to the magic from the Bible? Where did it disappear to? I wanted to find the magic and the mystery. And so one of the magical events was that I was, once again, I'd left my friends. This is the first trip. I'm a backpacker now. And I had the names of 3 or 4 top gurus I should go see. I had Sai Baba's address, Neem Karoli Baba's address, and a couple of other people.
Address.
Yeah.
It's India. You had like
right.
you had a town name maybe.
Yeah. And when you go
and their name you just had to ask for.
And,
right?
the crazy thing is, in India, nobody will ever tell you they don't know the directions. They feel like they have to point you in a direction, whether it's right or wrong.
That's right.
So,
but it's funny. People actually know stuff, though. You know what I mean? Like here, you ask someone where's something. I don't know. Nobody knows anything. But in India, it's like you ask people, hey, where's the bus to this little rinky-dink town? Oh, it's right over there. And they're right. You like cross the street, it's right over here, and that's the bus. And you're like, how did you even know that?
Yeah, because not.
Everything's kind of like a verbal communication. You know, here we have the signs. You know, we always read the signs, but there
it's become, now it's becoming very. But in those days, you wanted to make a call to the United States, you had to book it the day before at the post office to make a telephone call. It was so different than it is now.
Anyway, I sort of interrupted you and changed
things. So I'm walking around with the address of 3 very fine gurus in my pocket.
Sorry, Sai Baba, Neem Karoli Baba.
And I don't really remember
who the third was.
anything. And so I'm walking around Connaught Circus, they call it, because the streets are concentrically in Delhi. Yeah, and all of a sudden, a fellow walks up to me dressed in Indian whites, and he goes, Neem Karoli Baba, Neem Karoli Baba, Neem Karoli Baba, like 7 times to my forehead.
It's a little scary, actually.
Well, it was intense. It was really intense.
You're like, what? But at least you knew Neem Karoli Baba, so at least that made sense, right? You had the name,
Yeah,
you knew what the name was.
and the truth is, in India, things were happening
Yeah.
that were strange all the time anyway. That's part of the reason why you were there.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. No, it's
so
true.
it
It's a little
wasn't
magical.
that out of the ordinary. So the intuitively poor reflection on myself is that I didn't go to see Neem Karoli Baba, but I just felt like that was some kind of a benediction. It wasn't like some guy said, "Oh, have you ever heard of Neem Karoli Baba?" It was like, just startling and just.
And that was it. He just walked away.
Intent. And he just walked away, and that was it.
He's not like, hey, the bus is leaving now.
No, and in my skeptical Philadelphia, I looked and I thought, oh, he walked over from like the taxi area. He probably wants to take me on a $300 ride up into the mountains or something. So I passed on, and then as it turned out, these, of course, were who all my best friends and guru brothers was the ones who went. Now, I have to say, I don't think most of them got a personal invitation like I did. So I don't know what to say about that, and I know we're going to, possibly explore some of that later. So I'll just leave it there. But to say that it was really
so let's
profound.
talk a little bit about how you got into meditation or what that was like. So you had this experience with acid, and then you said you practiced. But what does that mean? How did you start, or what did you?
Interesting question. I started off by staring at the wall.
You just sort of decided on your own.
I just decided on my own, which is a Zen practice, as it turns out. Of course, at that time, after this LSD trip, I could still see into the wall, but I was staring at the wall. And that was my initial practice. And then I came back to the United States, cleared up my situation, and I began going to see Hilda Charlton, who had this in New York City. It was sort of like a salon almost, where all these amazing teachers would come. And Hilda was this woman who went to India for 6 months as a dancer and stayed for 17 years. And she was a very amazing, etheric, personality. And then she hooked up with Joya, who was an American homegrown guru type, and Ram Dass came. And there I met all the Neem Karoli Baba people who had gone and were with Neem Karoli, came because Ram Dass was saying he thought that the Maharaji was coming through Joya. So all of the Ram Dass people came, and it was just this confluence and melange. And I was really doing more Bhakti Yoga in the beginning.
Which is what? Bhakti Yoga?
Which is heart yoga, like it's devotional yoga. So doing devotional yoga and towards Neem Karoli Baba, and living in they had these spiritual houses dotted around Queens. They were based with Joya.
Queens,
New York.
Queens, New York.
Yeah.
Oh, we're back in the States
We're
now.
back in the States because Hilda was giving this salon at St. John the Divine's in the end, and this other church in the beginning. So this amazing thing was going on in Manhattan. So I was there, and I was doing Bhakti Yoga, and then somebody said to me, "Oh, if you like this, you'd really love the Dzogchen teachings, which is Buddha. It's a really, really refined, esoteric type of Buddhist. It's actually even pre-Buddhist. They had Dzogchen teachings in Tibet originally, but that was more along the lines of Buddhism. But it's not really a gradual path. Say like where your teachings are shamatha, vipassana, in other words, calm state, insight, and then it's a different type of a teaching where it's really, you could look at it. It start at the top first. The tenets of Dzogchen Buddhism are direct introduction of the ultimate truth, gain confidence in that, and continue in that state. So it's all the same thing. It's like once you're here now and you can maintain that be here now, there's not that much teaching, although they have incredible techniques and profound teachings, but that's the main teaching from. So I ended up studying Dzogchen, going with my friend who was a guru buddy of mine. He studied the Dzogchen. He was a Neem Karoli Baba devotee, and we took a trip to St. John's, American Virgin Islands, and we created our own meditation retreat down there, listened to tapes, read books, did yoga, and sat. And then we looked across this beautiful, peaceful, things couldn't get any better than that space, and we looked across and we saw these people in this beautiful, giant place. It must have been a conference center. And we said, wait a second, we have to create a course so that we can come back here every year and do a program down here. And instead, we ended up doing the program in Manhattan, and we called it Conscious Living. And it was basically a Vipassana. It was the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, and how to bring it alive in your life. So that's
where you are now.
Yeah.
So you're teaching around the city and stuff, and we're almost out of time.
Yes, so I would say basically what I'm doing now is, after 14, 15 years of that, I stopped doing that and I started doing counseling or meditation coaching, because people don't have gurus, but they have all these questions,
right,
etc. And then I have this other program which is kind of unique that I call lifestyle renovation, where somebody can come and not only learn to meditate, but learn about natural foods cooking, about yoga, and just waking up in the moment wherever they are. So those are kind of the two dual. And the coaching thing I can do by Skype, so I can do it anywhere in the world. It's a fun and from having fielded those questions for 14, 15 years, I sort of know what people
are asking.
Yeah, everybody has similar questions.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, and I'm really happy we had this chat, and we'll talk some more.
Okay, very good.
Thank you so much.
You're most welcome.